Have you ever finished a book, closed the cover, and realized you only have a vague sense of what you just read? You saw the words, you turned the pages, but the ideas didn't really stick. That's what we call passive reading. It's like being a spectator. You're just sitting there, letting the words wash over you, expecting the author to do all the heavy lifting. The problem with passive reading is that it often leads to only a superficial familiarity with the material. You might recognize the title or the main characters, but the deeper meaning, the core arguments, they just don't land. You're simply absorbing words without truly engaging with them. The book remains outside of you, a collection of sentences on a page. Active reading, on the other hand, is a completely different experience. It's a dynamic process. It requires your participation, your effort, and your critical thinking. You're not just receiving information, you're interacting with it. Think of active reading like being a player in a game or a partner in a conversation. You're in dialogue with the author, questioning, considering, and connecting. The ultimate goal of active reading is to move beyond just seeing the words. It's about unlocking deep understanding and achieving true retention of the ideas presented in the book. It's about making the author's thoughts your own, integrating them into your existing knowledge. So how do we become active readers? The foundation lies in asking the right questions. There are 4 fundamental questions that guide you through the process of analytical reading. These questions transform reading from a passive activity into an active investigation. They are your tools for digging deeper into any text. Let's start with the first question. It's about getting the big picture. Question 1 is, what is the book about as a whole? This might sound simple, but it's crucial. It means grasping the book's overall theme, its main subject matter, and its central purpose. What is the author trying to achieve with this entire work? Part of answering this question involves understanding the book's structure and organization. How is the book divided? What are the main parts or sections, and how do they relate to each other? Once you have the overall sense, you move to the details. Question 2 is, what is being said in detail and how? This is where you dive into the specifics. You're trying to identify the author's specific message, the individual points they are making. This involves understanding the key terms the author uses. What do important words mean in the context of this book? It also means identifying the main propositions or claims the author makes and the arguments they use to support those claims. After understanding what the author is saying, you must evaluate it. Question 3 is the book true, in whole or part? This is the critical thinking step. You are no longer just trying to understand the author. You are judging the validity of their ideas. You need to assess whether the author's claims are valid and sound. What is the evidence provided? Does it truly support the conclusions? Finally, you consider the book's significance. Question 4 is, what of it? This question asks about the book's relevance and importance. Why does this book matter? It's about connecting the ideas in the book to broader contexts. How do these ideas relate to other books, other subjects, or the world around you? It's also about connecting the ideas to your personal understanding and experience. How does this book change your perspective or apply to your life? Asking these 4 questions is essential, but how do you keep track of your answers and your thinking process? This is where intelligent note-taking comes in. Making a book your own requires physical engagement with the text or with your thoughts about the text. This often means writing in the book itself if you own it, or taking detailed notes elsewhere. The act of writing keeps you engaged and awake. It forces you to slow down and process the information actively rather than just scanning. Writing notes records your thinking process. It's a tangible record of your dialogue with the author, your questions, your agreements, and your disagreements. There are different types of notes that correspond to the different questions we've discussed. Understanding these types helps you organize your engagement. First, there are structural notes. These relate directly to question 1, what is the book about as a whole? Structural notes involve outlining the book's organization. You might note the main parts, chapters, or sections, and their relationship. You can also write brief summaries of these parts. Next are conceptual notes. These relate to question 2, what is being said in detail and how? Conceptual notes focus on the author's language and specific points. This includes defining key terms as the author uses them and identifying the main propositions or claims being made. You might also map out the author's arguments. Finally, there are dialectical notes. These relate to questions 3 and 4. Is the book true, and what of it? Dialectical notes record your critical engagement. This is where you write down your questions for the author, note where you agree or disagree, and make connections to other ideas or your own experiences. These notes are not just summaries. They are a record of your active thinking and evaluation. They capture the conversation you are having with the book. To truly understand what an author is saying in detail, you must first come to terms with their language. Authors use words in specific ways, and we need to grasp their intended meaning. This starts with identifying key words and terms. These are the words that are central to the author's argument or subject matter. They often carry significant weight. Once identified, you need to determine their precise meaning within the book's context. A word can have multiple meanings, but the author is using it in a particular way in this specific text. It's important to distinguish different meanings of the same word as the author uses them. Sometimes, an author might use a word in slightly different senses in different parts of the book, and being aware of this is crucial for accurate understanding. Beyond individual words, authors express their ideas through propositions and arguments. You need to be able to identify these building blocks of their thought. Propositions are key sentences that state the author's main claims or assertions. These are statements that can be judged as true or false. A helpful technique is to paraphrase these propositions in your own words. This ensures you haven't just memorized the sentence but have actually grasped its meaning. If you can't rephrase it, you likely don't fully understand it. Authors don't just make claims, they support them with reasons. This is where arguments come in. You need to identify the arguments the author uses. An argument is a series of propositions where some propositions, the premises, provide support for another proposition, the conclusion. Identifying these helps you see the structure of the author's reasoning. Understanding the author's terms, propositions, and arguments is fundamental to answering question 2 and preparing you for question 3, where you evaluate the truth of what has been said. Even with the right questions and techniques, active reading isn't always easy. There are common obstacles that can trip us up. Being aware of these pitfalls helps us avoid them. One common pitfall is reading only for facts. While facts are important, a book is usually more than just a collection of data points. Focusing solely on facts means you might miss the author's overall argument, their interpretation of those facts, or the broader implications of the information. You get the pieces, but not the whole picture. Another significant obstacle is the illusion of understanding. This happens when you read the words and they seem familiar, but you haven't truly tested your comprehension. You might nod along, thinking you get it, but if someone asked you to explain it in your own words or apply the concept, you'd struggle. This is why paraphrasing and note-taking are so important. They test your understanding. Emotional interference is another pitfall. Our own biases, prejudices, or strong feelings about a topic or author can prevent us from fairly evaluating what is being said. If you strongly agree or disagree with an author from the outset, it can be difficult to objectively assess their arguments. Active reading requires setting aside, as much as possible, your initial emotional reactions to engage with the ideas themselves. Finally, it's easy to get stuck on details or, conversely, ignore context. Getting bogged down in minor points can distract you from the main argument. Ignoring the context, the historical period, the author's background, the genre of the book, can lead to misinterpretations of the text. Active reading requires balancing attention to detail with an understanding of the broader context. By being mindful of these common obstacles, you can approach your reading with greater awareness and avoid falling into passive habits. Active reading is a skill that improves with practice and conscious effort. It transforms your relationship with books and unlocks a deeper level of learning and engagement.